Games Workshop. Love the models, but hate the rules. And in this vlog, I want to ask a very, very interesting question and speculate. And I say speculate with how the hobby is developing and the different directions in terms of pressure from external sources being put on Games Workshop. And of course, this timetable is not instantaneous. It's not the immediate future. Perhaps it's the far future, because Games Workshop, in terms of sci-fi miniatures, is still very much the massive, massive powerhouse in the industry. And if we focus exclusively on Warhammer 40,000, that dominance is immense, not only through just literally physical years of domination, 25, 30 plus years, but also a very, very engaging and evolving storyline. They hit on a lot of currents that pull players in, keep you in, and push that forward. But if we look at historical wargaming, I'm going to compress things a little bit, but if we look at the evolution of historical wargaming, the focus was historicals. Historical wargaming focusing on historicals. Roman legions, Napoleonics, World War II. This idea of literally taking little toy soldiers and recreating a battle with various degrees of rules, some simplified, some very layered, very complex, and asking the question, historically, if you were in this place at this moment as this general, how would have the battle played out? And we see this in many historical wargamers layering over the rules, researching before a battle. When I was heavily into Napoleonics years ago, this idea of, before we played the game, research was done to recreate the battlefield, historical accounts, the units, the forces. It was not always an equal fight. It wasn't you have 50 battle points and I have 50 battle points and we pull our units. It was, these were the sides. This was the terrain. I mean, it was very much a simulation in the physical. And then we got in it and see what happened. So there was this idea that the miniatures were represented by various companies. Now, we see this today if we look at the various World War II miniatures that are out there. Yes, there are miniatures made for specific rule sets like Flames of War, but you can equally take those Flames of War miniatures, or Plastic Soldier Company. I have a number of Plastic Soldier Company miniatures that they're not linked to any one rule because no one owns the historical IP. So you can use it with Chain of Command, World War II. You can use it with Flames of War. You can use it with generic infantry wargaming type rules. Heck, you can make up your own kind of unique system for it. The miniatures are rule separated from the rules. You kind of take them and you play them. Now, naturally, we might have our own favorite rule sets, or if you're part of a gaming group, everyone might play the same rule set. I mean, one of the reasons why I got so involved in DBA was just simply because that's what the group played. And later on, being introduced to other rule sets, they always seemed a little kind of different to me, simply because, not that they were better or worse, but that was my DNA into the hobby. So now we've come to Warhammer 40,000. And you have to agree, at this place, at this time, the miniatures that Games Workshop produces are fantastic. And as of this vlog, just looking, I recently picked up a Necron monolith. I've always loved playing the Necrons. The new Necron monolith, the new Necron models are amazing with what they're putting out. And the old ones were fantastic too. But this idea that Games Workshop admittedly is pushing the cutting edge of miniatures. So if you take the awesomeness of these miniatures and how they look, and you layer that into this kind of this grim, dark, gothic, eternal war, hopelessness, but acts of great, great glory or domination, or if you're playing orcs just for the fun of it, see what happens, that creates a very compelling formula, a very compelling narrative. But now we're in this cycle, as Games Workshop has grown and is now chasing return on value and shareholders and kind of moving from, albeit a very, very powerful company for miniature wargaming, essentially to a profit machine, an extraction machine. You see that more and more miniatures are being produced in limited numbers. I commented on this a couple of weeks ago. It's up on my archive. Warhammer 40K is unsustainable because you're compelled to buy new and more stuff. The rules are constantly changing because that's how you buy new miniatures. You kind of nerf the old miniatures. You're forced to go out to buy the new miniatures. By having such an accelerated system of release, nothing's play tested, nothing's balanced, and it's not balanced because you're not playing a historic game. When I played Chain of Command World War II, I played my late war Germans because I love tanks. I love tons and tons of tanks. I want kind of the King Tigers and the Tigers and all that stuff. But I realized my infantry platoons, being historical, they're weak sauce. Going up against the Americans, they're tired. They have logistics problems. They're not that good, and there's not enough elite troops to go around. So from that historical perspective, late war, the invasion of Europe, going up against Americans, I've got major problems. And that's okay, because I'm playing my tanks. It's not supposed to be competitive. It's supposed to be historically accurate. But Warhammer 40,000, yes, the narrative is all over the place, but it's supposed to be a game competitive where we have this matrix of formulas, and somehow, even though we have different armies, tactics aside, we both stand an equal chance of winning, or at least starting at the same page. There's no way that's true. It's never been true of 40K. Play 40K for long enough, you begin to realize that. And I'm not ranting on 40K. I love it. I still play it. I will be playing it. I'm working on my Necrons. They're getting ready to roll out. I have never painted so much stuff in such a short amount of time, especially rebooting an army. And I want to do Tyranids and Grey Knights. And it's that narrative and it's the models. But the question I find myself, I'm asking myself more and more, and is this heresy? I'll be reported to the Inquisition immediately. So we might have to actually delete this. But I have been playing 40K with better rule sets than 40K, and I have been enjoying the 40K experience better because I'm not using Games Workshop rules. I'm not limiting myself to these awful rule sets, these unbalanced rule sets. The fact that things are always changing, maybe units aren't performing the way that they are, and it's becoming more historical where I'm trying to recreate something on the tabletop. Here's a great example. Taking Chain of Command World War II rules and plugging in the different factions to represent the different armies, they behave much better. It's tactically better. The game plays better, and I get to envision my Space Marines and my Berserkers and my Eldar and all that stuff, my Imperial Guard, that plug into these lists with no crossover or just using the rules straight up. So I begin to wonder if 40K continues to chase such shareholder value. They have the narrative, they have the IP, they have the models. What if you had a rule set where you're taking a heavy tank? That could be a Land Raider, that could be a Leman Russ, that could be a Necron Monolith, and the rules are so much better. You could play whatever models within your faction that you want to play, and you can utilize those in a context separated from the rules, essentially going back to like what all these World War II miniatures that are being produced. I mean, is that too radical? And if Games Workshop continues to push the cycle of development that's not only impossible to keep up, but punishes you for loyally playing an army, or punishes you for not playing certain models at certain times and trying to balance out the rules and remember the rules, and then every 3 years a complete reboot, start over, or factions that you may love chaos, never going to win, never going to happen, because Games Workshop is never going to show the love to be able to explore them independent of the rules. Is that heresy or not? So I pose that question out there because I can see part of it happening. I can see players, the love of the narrative, the love of the source books, the love of the Black Library, the love of the Grimdark, the love of the models. They're fantastic, but saying, you know what? And this isn't, I want to go back to an old edition of 40K. I want to go back to the glory years of 4th edition or 5th edition or whatever edition you started in. No, I mean, like, kick the entire rule set out. Let's use some awesome miniatures to play an awesome game and really have a rule set that immerses us into the grimdark. Does the current rule set of 40K do it? Will it continue to do it? It's not in their best interests to ever do that. Is that heresy? Is that madness? Is that crazy? Is that Sparta? But that aside, I've been experimenting with it. I will continue to experiment with it, pushing what I always try to do with my miniatures. And this is what I say, regardless of the rule system. Try to get the most out of your collection. Be open to experimentation. Be open to the existing rule sets that you have, playing it in different ways, exploring different things. Use your miniatures. There's a reason why we're playing with miniatures and not little cardboard tokens on a hex map, although some wargaming systems are that. We're playing with miniatures because we're trying to step out of space and time, create something interesting, roll some dice, have some fun, blow some stuff up, and create memories with our friends. More and more, as rule sets evolve, as more rule sets come out there, and as the rules become harder and harder to extract profit from, it's the miniatures. It's the models. It's what you can create with that. Will Warhammer 40K ever turn that page? Will it ever get there where Games Workshop now says, you know what? We're going back to the old days and focusing completely on the miniatures and pushing that aspect out. We may push some rules out, we may not. But imagine a world where Games Workshop didn't necessarily put out rules. They put out amazing miniatures. They put out amazing source books, narrative, artwork that got you pumped. And then you navigate the grimdark as you want to navigate the grimdark. Different rule sets, different role-playing games, different skirmishes, different just like let's set some miniatures up and, I don't know, see what happens on the table. Can that world ever possibly exist?